Hi, I'm Liz Whiteacre, and we're going to talk about tools to revision a fairy tale. So this week in class, we're focusing on how we can use Kurt Vonnegut's plot method to understand how plots work in short stories, fairy tales, and then use that method to help us come up with our own plot for the fairy tale that we're going to be talking about. We'll also explore setting and environment, narration, point of view in stories, and character. And you will experiment with the traditional methods of these different strategies to create your own brand new, unique fairy tale that you'll be sharing with classmates next week. So in Skypack, you're asked to use Kurt Vonnegut's method to create plots of a fairy tale that you have selected. And all of this information and pre-information and assignment information is in Skypack, so you can go there to check it out. Watch Vonnegut's video, think about how you want to use this method, but I wanted to, in this video, show you an example of what that would look like. So let me move to make that a little bit bigger. What I did was select Little Red Riding Hood. So for the assignment, if you're starting to feel a little worn out with Cinderella, and you would like to select either a different culture's retelling of Cinderella or version of it, or if you want to move to another fairy tale that you're familiar with and you love, maybe something that you remember fondly when you were growing up, that is just fine. So for this example, we're thinking about the Brothers Grimm Little Red Riding Hood. I'm going to show you here. I've started my plot on a piece of paper. And so I have my line that has the beginning to the end of the story. And then I also have my vertical line for ill fortune down at the bottom and good fortune up at the top. So when I think about Little Red Riding Hood, the story kicks off with Little Red Riding Hood's mother asking her to take the basket of food to Grandma's house. And that's often what happens in most retellings of the specific tale, like Charles Perrault or the Grimm's Brothers, or even Disney. So it's your average day, you're a kid, I gotta go do this chore. So we're kind of beginning at, well, the day's so-so. That's where I chose to start the plot. And I have my label here that Mom sends Red to food with Grandma's house. So as you are drawing out the plot for the fairy tale that you're focusing on and analyzing for the assignment, make sure you don't forget to label what those different points are so we know where in the story you're referring to. Little Red Riding Hood's having a great walk to Grandma's, and so her fortune is improving. I decided to put that next plot line above the everyday average, things are going fine line there. She meets this wolf who's really kind and charming, asks her what she's doing. She naively lets him know what her plans are for the day. And he is so kind, he even says, why don't you go pick your grandma some flowers to go with that lovely basket of food? So Little Red Riding Hood thinks that's a great idea. She goes over and picks some flowers, starts building that bouquet for Grandma. Now, unbeknownst to her, because we're following her perspective on this line, she does not realize the wolf is skyrocketing. He is going so fast to Grandma's to get there ahead of her. He is eating Grandma. He's getting in her clothes. He is getting into bed, ready to welcome Little Red Riding Hood because he thinks he's going to get 2 snacks today. Little Red Riding Hood arrives to Grandma. She's really happy. She's made it. She's about to see her grandma. And then the wolf welcomes her. And we have those famous lines. My grandmother, what big eyes you have. So we have this moment where her fortune starts going downhill pretty quickly, right? You could even argue that it should go down further and further than I went there. But she's definitely in a place that's much worse than when she started in the story. The wolf eats Little Red Riding Hood in the Brothers Grimm, and we know she's in danger. She knows, I mean, she's been eaten, so she's definitely in danger, and things are at their worst. A hunter in the Brothers Grimm story, sometimes in other tales, it's the woodsman, figures out what's going on, discovers the wolf in the house, and cuts the wolf open in order to save the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood. So again, we have this really quick shot up to, hey, this is wonderful. Well, not for the wolf, but wonderful for Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma. They have been saved. And so the good fortune just rises exponentially when that happens. We do have a moment in the story where everybody's like, oh, what now? This what just happened? Is everybody okay? So I decided to have a dip there. They also dispose of the wolf's body. They layer it with stones and drown it in the river to make sure he cannot hurt anyone ever again. And then after that moment, they come together at the end of the story here. Everybody's safe. Everybody's ready to move on to that happily ever after. So that is how you would plot a story, right? You're kind of deciding, and this is subjective, right? I feel like it's worse off, better off, and you're moving along and making sure. Now, this is something that you can choose to do on a piece of paper, snap a picture of it, and upload that picture into Skypack. I'm going to forward. You can also, if you are handy with Microsoft Word, or I use the program online, the free website Canva, to create this chart here. You could do this digitally, and you can put in typed labels, which I'll show you in just a moment. But if you take a look here, I've got my plot, and I have recreated it here. So when it comes time for you in the assignment to revision the fairy tale that you wanted to do, I recommend that you put a sheet of paper over the plot that you just did for your original fairy tale, draw those dots and those lines in, and that leaves you a space to go in and put in your own content. I'm going to show you again. I'm going from the Grimm's brothers' ups and downs and decisions to a blank graph to putting in my own labels for the story that I want to tell. So I'm establishing a new plot. Here, I've decided to go modern day, something that all of us can relate to. Instead of leaving to go off to grandma's house, I'm having someone graduate from college, perhaps you indie. Perhaps very soon, some of you might be able to relate to that. And then moving to a city. I haven't decided where yet, but this person's going to move to the city. This person is going to find an okay job. It's going to get better when that person makes friends through work. In some way, that person is going to betray a friend at work, and things are going to be awful until that person redeems themselves. And life will get better at work, but things aren't going to be awesome until that relationship is repaired and the friendship is renewed. So those are the basic moments in the plots that I'm going to write towards when I create my brand new fairy tale. Notice this has nothing to do with grandmothers or wolves or sharing meals, maybe. We'll see. There's no forest here, but I'm still following those same types of obstacles that are going to move my characters' fortunes up, keep them static, or make them go down again. And so that's the point of the plot, is to help us go up and down, and do it in a way that we know, because it's based on something that's been really successful, should be a pretty great way to go. Once you have figured out the things that you'd like to have happen in your story, you need to start fleshing that out and thinking about what the setting might be. For example, I said, I'm not sure what kind of city, I'm not sure what kind of hometown. I'll want to decide that, because that might affect who my characters are, or what type of events happen in the city, or the way that my characters become friends. So is this person leaving New York City? Right? They got their degree in NYC and they're going to a smaller town that might be a very different culture than what they're familiar with. Or maybe it's reverse. Maybe someone's leaving a smaller rural town, and they know that lifestyle, and they're moving to Indianapolis, let's say, where it's a different culture and different type of experiences that that person is going to be having. So those are things that I'm going to want to think about and maybe jot down and do some brainstorming before I get to work on my story. I'm also going to want to think about my narration. Again, this goes back to who is telling this story. Is it first person? Is the main character telling you his or her its experience? I, me, my, right? We. Is it going to be in second person? That's used less frequently, but it can still be effective where you, right? So as an audience member, a reader, you become the character and it's a direct address to the audience. So if I said you have graduated from this high school and you're moving to the city, that's a very different experience for the reader than reading about I and this happened to me. And then the other option you might choose is third person, and that would be like the traditional Grimm Brothers story, where we have Little Red Riding Hood went to see her grandmother, not you went to see your grandmother or I went to see my grandmother. So making that decision early on is going to be very helpful before you start writing that story. You'll also want to establish your characters. Who are these people in this world? And you might also think about how do they change? I know I'm going to need at least one main character, the person who's going to graduate, move, make friends, make a mistake at work that betrays those friends, and then have to redeem and eventually make things right. So I need a main character. I need at least one friend, at least one. Probably there will need to maybe be a boss in that situation, perhaps some other office mates, maybe a roommate. So I'm going to think about my cast of characters and who I'm going to need to populate that world in order for the plot to successfully happen. Then putting it all together. Some things that you should anticipate doing when you sit down to outline or free write or just here we go, we got it done. I have a fully realized idea in my head. I'm ready to write my story. You could start off with exposition like Freytag's pyramid suggests. So briefly establish the background. It might even just be a couple sentences. I could very quickly in my story let you know what kind of town my character has graduated from and why that person is excited to leave and go to the city by providing a few details. You may want to get to the catalyst fairly quickly. This is a short story, right? We're looking for around 1,000 words. So spending 5 pages on the backstory for your character would be appropriate for a longer work like a novella or a novel, but it might not work so well if your story is 4 pages in total, right? So think about what is going to kick things off. Is it really the person has graduated, or is it maybe the move-in day, right? Or is it maybe that person seeing the advertisement for the job in the newspaper and this is perfect for me, right? And that person then goes and gets the job, or maybe it's the job interview. So think about what is going to start the action for that first plot movement on your chart, and think about having that happen fairly soon in your story. And then we have what Freytag's pyramid talked about, the rising action, or when we're thinking about the hero's journey, there's different moments where they encounter different people and different things happen. What is going to keep your story moving forward? So the person gets a job. Something's going to have to happen for them to become friends. So does that happen in the office, at a meeting? Is that going to happen after work? Maybe some people from the office invite my main character to go have a meal, and that's what happens. So I have to figure out what has to happen between people in order to get to the next step where the job is going well. And then as the job's going well, what has to happen for it to not to, right? Maybe things are going really well. The main character and the friends are put on the same team, and the main character gets to be the lead on the team, and the main character takes the friends' ideas and presents them to the boss or the clients as his or her own. And that is what the betrayal is, stealing those people's ideas, not giving them credit. So kind of thinking about What keeps us moving? And then what is that person going to have to do in order to make that right and give those people credit so that they want to continue working with him or her? Characters' responses to obstacles. So how do the decisions that your character's making affect growth? Right? If my character decided, forget them, I'll make new friends, right? That would be a very different story than I have betrayed these people who have given me nothing but support since I've gotten here. How do I make this right? So every time your character faces an obstacle in your story, you want to think about what decision is made, and then how does that affect the other events that are going to happen later on. The setting, the environment. Place will affect your characters, it'll affect what's happening. For example, if I have my character moving from New York City, that is, we all know stuff about that, even if we've not been there, to Bloomfield, Michigan, a place that maybe you do know about it, but fewer people would know. What are the assumptions and the stereotypes that our main character has moving to that different place? And how is that going to influence the way they present themselves at the office? Even just what the office space is like. Is this a big corporation where they work on the 17th floor and it's really hard to meet people? Or are they moving into a smaller, maybe a tech firm that has ping pong tables and not a lot of people, think tank, if you will, where that person can very easily get into more intimate situations with people and get to know them much more quickly. Detail and dialogue. Think about what are you doing to help readers experience the world that you've created in your fairy tale retelling. That might include some details here and there about what things look like, smell like, sound like. It might be having your characters talk to each other sometimes so we can hear what those people sound like and see them engage with each other. And then the resolution or the wrapping up of things. Right? Kurt Vonnegut has his off the chart happiness. They are living together and everything's beautiful in the world. We have Freytag's pyramid with the denouement, right? How are things resolving? Sometimes things are very satisfying, right? And people live happily ever after. Other times we are left a little bit on a cliffhanger. But regardless of how you choose to end your story, something that you'll want to think about is, what lesson about life are you giving readers as they've spent time with your characters in this world and witnessing what's been happening to these people and how they're responding to it? What do your readers walk away with? And that's something important to think about as you're crafting the story. If you're like, nothing, I don't know, right? Well, is that going to invite readers to come back to your work later on? Are they going to feel like that was time well spent? And so thinking about that as you're starting and putting together your story and writing the rough draft this week will be really helpful. So looking ahead, this week Skypack's going to help prepare you, and this lecture is preparing you to write your first very own brand new fairy tale based on a fairy tale from the past. You are the person making the decision about which fairy tale you would like to retell. And if you have any questions or are struggling with that decision, go ahead and message me right after this video so that we can talk about it and brainstorm together. You're writing a complete rough draft this week, and then we'll be preparing it early next week to participate in workshop 1 with some classmates. They will be reading your story, providing feedback to you, and you will be reading their stories and providing feedback to them, so you can use that reader response to help you continue to shape your story, polish it, and get it ready, hopefully for your e-portfolio at the end of the term. If you have any questions or concerns as you work, as always, don't hesitate to get in touch, and I can't wait to see what you create.